Dear student, we shall discuss Chapter 2, Power Sharing on Political Science. Significance of power sharing. In a democracy, power sharing holds immense significance for the following reason. Number 1, unity in diversity. It is instrumental in bringing diverse socio-cultural communities together and motivating them to work collectively for the development of their nation. In a country like India, where there are people coming from different races, speaking different languages, having a diverse or different socio-culture, is very, very important to let them work collectively for the development of the nation. Number 2, political stability. In the absence of political stability, it can result in conflicts and adversely affect the political stability of a country. Integrity. Lack of political stability for a long duration may further damage the prospects of country's unity and integrity. Equal opportunities. Power sharing among diverse or different groups of people in a country is very, very important, because it ensures that everyone has equal access to the opportunities of development without any discrimination against any particular community or bias in favor of some other communities. Means people, irrespective of coming from different communities, maybe a minority or majority, or maybe a particular community belong to a high caste or low caste, irrespective of all this, equal opportunities is given for development. Adherence to democratic principles. Power sharing essentially signifies the realizations of the basic principles of democracy, such as those of equality, irrespective of people coming from different backgrounds, different religion, different regions. Every citizen will be treated as equally. That is equality. Liberty means freedom. Fraternity, that is brotherhood, sense of brotherhoodness. And justice, that is just law or righteousness. Forms of power sharing. Power sharing among different organs of government of India. There is a horizontal division of power among the three organs of the government of India. The first one is legislature, the organ which is responsible for making law. Second is the executive, the organs responsible for implementing the law made by the legislature. And the third one is the judiciary, and the judiciary is responsible for interpreting the law. And we term it as horizontal because all the organs of the government are placed at the same level in terms of exercising their power. Each of them functions independently, exercises certain powers within the limits set by the by our constitution and act as a deterrent to any misuse of power by others. So it is clearly mentioned in the constitution that any of these three government organs cannot go beyond the limits, and if at all there is a case, then each of the organs will act as a deterrent or to stop or to check or to discourage from misusing the power. Power sharing at different levels of government. In India, we know besides the union or central government, there are state government at a state level. The Constitution of India lays down provisions regarding powers to be exercised by government at the union and state level. And this sharing of power is known as federal division of power. The Constitution of India also lays down certain power for local bodies such as the municipality, like the Aizawl Municipal Corporation, and the Panchayat. We don't have Panchayat in state like Mizoram, but the equivalent, for your understanding, is the local council or village council. Power sharing among different social groups. In India, the system of reservation of seats for minority groups in state assemblies and the parliament is one important way of distributing power among different social groups. Power is also shared among people of different castes. For example, reservations or quotas have been set for backward sections such as scheduled castes and scheduled tribes like Mizo tribes, so that they are not left behind. Power sharing among various political parties. In a democracy, citizens have the choice to elect their representatives. These representatives belongs to different political parties. This allows healthy competition among various contenders for power. For example, we have regional parties, we have national parties like BJP, Indian National Congress, and the examples of regional parties are like MNF, ZMP in Mizoram, Telugu Desam Party in Andhra Pradesh, AIADMK in Tamil Nadu, AGP in Assam. All these are national and regional parties. And in a democracy like India, every parties are given a chance to compete among the various contenders for power in the state as well as the central government. Federalism. By federalism, it is a system of government in which power is divided between a central authority, that is the central government, and constituent political units. That is, power is shared between central and state governments. A federation has two levels of government. One level constitutes the government for the entire country, which is responsible for matters relating to common national interest. And the other one is provincial or state levels government, and they look after the day day-to-day administration of different states. Unitary and federal governments. The nature of the relationship between the center and the states determines the classifications of government as unitary and federal. Number one, power sharing. In a unitary government, all the powers are vested in the central government, whereas in a federal government, the powers are divided between the center and the provincial units. So for a country like India, in a federal system, the power is shared between the state and the central government, unlike unitary government where all the powers are in the hand of the central government. Number two, levels of government. Under the unitary system, either there is only one level of government or the sub-units are subservient to the central government. On the other hand, in a federal system like our government, the central government cannot directly pass orders to the state government. The state governments have powers of their own and they are entitled to formulate and enforce legislation without being dictated or influenced by the central government. Thus, in a federal system, the states function as autonomous political units on most of the issues or problems that concern them. Both governments are separately answerable to the people. Distribution of power. That is the feature of federal state, the characteristics of federal states, and the first point is distribution of power. The central and the state government are constitutionally equal in status and position. This prevents concentrations of power at a hand or at a central level. Power sharing. Powers are essentially distributed by the Constitution between the central government on the one hand and the state government on the other. Legal sanctity. A federal system implies the supremacy of a constitution, which means the Constitution of India is supreme. A federal state derives its existence from the Constitution. Powers of both central and state government are determined by the constitutions of India. And any change in the constitution can be brought about only through the process of amendment. Next point, arbiter of disputes. To maintain in practice the supremacy of the Constitution, every federal state must have a Supreme Court to interpret the Constitution and to keep a check on different levels of government. At any point of time, if there is any problem, any issues with regard to the interpretations of the constitutions, if there is a dispute, a conflict between any state organs, organs of the government, that is between legislature and executive or between the states and the central government, the Supreme Court will check or interpret the Constitution so as to keep on different levels of government. Execution of power. The federal constitution is complicated in nature, means can be quite difficult to understand it. As the supreme law of the land, that is the constitution, it is essentially a written and rigid constitution, means the law of the land is found in the form of written, and it is a rigid constitution, means it cannot be changed, it cannot be amended very easily. The federating units exercise responsibility within the areas accorded to them by the constitution. Next point, multiple allegiance or multiple loyalty. In some federal states or country like the USA, there exists a form of double allegiance, which means a citizen is subject to the laws of the state or unit that he or she belongs to or resides or live in, as well as to the federal laws. Two houses. The central legislature under a federal system is generally bicameral, means two houses, the lower house and the upper house, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Types of federation. Coming together federation. By coming together federation, it is a type of federation in which independent states or countries come together on their own to form a bigger unit, so that by pooling sovereignty or by coming together and retaining identity, they can increase their security. Examples are like the US, Australia, and Switzerland. Holding together federation. By holding together federation, it is a type of federation in which a large country decides to divide its power between the constituent states and the central government. Examples of holding together federations nations are India, Spain, and Belgium. Asymmetric federation. Holding together federation at times develop from unitary states as the central government devolves authority to foil any attempt to spread unrest or secession by territorial cluster minorities. In a holding together federation, sometimes some territory which is occupied by minorities try to withdraw from the rest of the federation. Such federal political orders often grant some members unit a certain degree of autonomy, that is self-government, such as language and cultural rights in an asymmetric federation. Such federations have aspects that are not equal, while maintaining a broad scope of action for the central government and majorities. Therefore, different constituent units of the Federation may have unequal powers, with some of them enjoying special powers granted to them. Federalism in India. The Constitution of India describes India as a union of states. India is not federal in a strict sense. It has adopted features that show a tendency towards a centralization of power. In fact, India is federal in nature but unitary in spirit, and hence is referred to as quasi-federal state. Formation of states after independence. When India attained freedom in 1947, it had to face a big challenge of reorganizing the state. And accomplishing this task called for the applications of federal principles as a matter of practical urgency. So even though our constitution does not use the word federal, the Indian Union has adopted federal principles in practice. The first one is the tiered approach. After independence, our country was divided into 14 states and 6 union territories, although today we have 29 states and 7 union territories. The union territories were smaller administrative units and were under the control of the central government. We had a two-tier system, central and state government. Later on, it was split into 3-tiered, that is the local bodies like municipalities and the panchayats systems. Next point, division of power. Our constitution provided a 3-pronged distributions of legislative power between the state and the union government. These are contained in 3 lists of subjects on which they can make legislation or laws. And these powers are known as union list, state list, and the concurrent list. I want all of you to please study carefully table 2.1 on page 218 to have a better understanding. Residual powers. Over and beyond this list, the union government has the power to legislate over residuary subjects, which means that the parliament has the exclusive power to make any law with respect to any matter not enumerated in the concurrent list or the state list. And the residuary subjects are, in case of preventions of activities involving terrorist acts directed towards threatening the safety and security of the government, or striking terror in the people or any section of the people, or alienating any section of the people, or adversely affecting the harmony among different sections of the people. The next point is prevention of other activities directed towards disclaiming, questioning, or disrupting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of India, or cessation of a part of the territory of India from the Union, or causing insult to India's national flag, the national anthem, and the constitution. The last point, taxes on foreign travel by sea or air, inland air travel, postal articles including money orders and telegram. So all this comes under the residuary subjects, which is not part of state or concurrent list. Special status for Jammu and Kashmir. Article 370 of the Indian Constitution accords special status to Jammu and Kashmir. However, the government of India had revoked this Article 370, which gave Jammu and Kashmir state a special status. They were allowed to have their own flags. At the same time, they were also allowed to have a different constitution, but this is no more allowed because the Article 370 had been revoked some few months back. Now, the Constitution especially stipulates that the provision with respect to the state of Jammu and Kashmir are purely on temporary nature, which means it is not for a permanent, rather it was for a temporary. The article was incorporated in the Constitution in the pursuance of the commitment made by the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, to Maharaja Hari Singh, who was the king of Jammu and Kashmir during the time of independence, that is in October 1947, at the time of signing the instrument of accession of Jammu and Kashmir to India. Administrations of the Union territories. There are some areas that are too small to be categorized as separate states, and at the same time they cannot be merged with other states. And these areas such as Lakshadweep or Daman and Diu have been assigned the status of union territories. And these union territories do not enjoy same powers as the state. Union territories are small administrative units unlike states, and they are administered by the president through an administrator known as Lieutenant Governor. Delhi, Puducherry, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Dadra and Nagar Haveli are some examples of the union territories. Resolution of disputes. Any change in power sharing between the state and the union territories has to be first passed by both the houses of the parliament with at least 2/3 of majority. After this, it has to be authorized and substantiated by the legislature of at least half the states. In case of any dispute between the states, the Supreme Court has the jurisdiction to restore said disputes. Such instances exhibit the critical role of our judiciary. Whenever there is a problem between any states and unitaries, the Lok Sabha, at the same time the Rajya Sabha, will decide, and in order to decide it, there is a requirement of 2/3 of majority. And a time comes when there is a dispute, a quarrel between states. It can be, for example, a quarrel or a dispute between Assam and Mizoram. At this point of time, the Supreme Court of India has the jurisdiction to restore the problems between the two states. And such examples exhibit the critical role of our judiciary, that is the Supreme Court. Significance of federal system in India. Number one, federalism helps India to amalgamate these diversities and at the same time govern the country as a whole. In a country like India, we have people coming from different regions, having different socio-cultural diversity, differences, different races, and for that, federalism helped the government to govern the country as a whole. The principle of holding together federation is to equip the center with the power to take unified action when a country's sovereignty or integrity is under threat. For example, if there is a threat of a country, for example, let's say if there is going to be a war between China and India or India and Pakistan, at that point of time, the holding together federation plays a very, very important role in equipping the central government to take a unified action in order to take an action for our integrity and sovereignty. India has therefore adopted the federal system in order to avoid repetitions of incidents such as the partition. By partition means when our country was divided into two nations, viz. India and Pakistan in 1947. So in order to avoid such types of incidents anymore, federalism, the federalism or federal system in India is very, very important. State and center relationship. Federalism under single party domination. Principles of federalism outline the basis of the relationship between the center and the state. However, several factors determine how they operate in practice. Federalism involves power sharing between the center and the states. States have autonomy within the area assigned to them by the Constitution. But this is not in reality. A study of election in India shows that up to 1984, almost all the elections at the central level were won by the Indian National Congress. The same party maintains its hold over most of the states of India. And this dominance by the same political party at the center and the state level resulted in significant development. Federalism under multi-party system. The emergence of coalition politics and powerful regional parties has mainly contributed to this process of decentralization and greater degree of federalism. Before the 1990s, since the inception of the parliamentary form of government or the elections held in our country from 1947, the Indian National Congress has been dominating, or they have been ruling our countries in the center at the same time in most of the states. But from the 90s onwards, a new trend was brought in the Indian polity, or the Indian National Congress, single party dominance of the Indian National Congress party came to an end, and it was replaced by a coalition government. Different political parties coming together and forming government in the center. Federalism and rise of regional parties. As the political scenario in the country changed with the coming of the first non-Congress government at the center in 1989, several state governments began to voice the demand for fair deal to states. And because of that, many regional parties began to find recognition and importance as the political dynamic changes. The regional parties are AIADMK, DMK in Tamil Nadu, TDP in Andhra Pradesh, AGP in Assam, MNF, ZMP in Mizoram. These are the few examples of regional parties. And these parties promoted regional aspirations and thus gained popular support of the local people. Consequently, it led to a political system that is based on the principles of decentralization of economic and political power. Federalism under coalition government. Many more elections have taken place since then, and in all these elections, formations of an alliance or coalition government has become inevitable. In the year 1989, for the first time in the history of Indian politics, there was no single party to form a government in the elections, and this led to a hung parliament. If no single party get the required majority to form the government in the general election, it is known as a hung parliament. Government at the central level could not be constituted by a single party because of this 1989 election, and a party that wished to form government would have to enter into alliance with other political parties to form the government. And this led to a new culture of power sharing and changed the dynamics of the autonomy of state government. Decentralization. By decentralization, it is referred to as the transfer of powers from the central government to lower levels in a political, administrative, and territorial hierarchy. Why decentralization? Power sharing. Power should be shared among the people living in cities, towns, and villages of India. The central and state government hence transfer some power to local self-governing institutions, which constitute the third level or third tier of the government in India. Settling of disputes. The fundamental idea behind centralization is that there are a large number of problems and issues which are best settled at the local level. For example, for a local disputes, it won't be possible for the central government, the union government, or the Prime Minister of India to know or to find out the issues between two localities. So in such cases, the requirement of decentralization comes into the picture. Better knowledge. People have better knowledge of the problems and about allocations and management of funds to resolve the problems in their local cities. Also, the third tier allows people to participate directly in the decision making. For example, for a VC member or a local council member, he will know the management, he'll also know the problems about a locality more than the state minister or the central minister. So this helps the so-called the local administrator to solve the problem, and at the same time the third tier also allows people to participate directly in the decision making. Gram Panchayat origins. In the past, each village had a government of its own. All adults, that is Puitling, of the village made up the Gram Sabha, which functions like a legislature. It met at least 2 times in a year. It passed the budget and evaluated the work of the Panchayat. The members of the Gram Sabha elected a group of members who formed the Gram Panchayat. The village administration was carried out by the Gram Panchayat. The members of this body were known as the Panch. The Sarpanch was the president of the body. The Nyay Panchayat gave justice to people in petty cases. Panchayati Raj. After independence, Balwan Rai Mehta Committee was formed, which submitted its report in November 1957. On the basis of recommendations made by the committee, the Panchayati Raj system was reintroduced in India. Why Panchayati Raj? Number 1, addressing issues. Some people thought that this institution had the capacity to involve people on issues that affected them. Effective medium. These bodies, they felt, could be the medium through which people could be included in the socio-economic reconstructions of the country. People would get the opportunity to take initiative to bring about changes. So by seeing this, what we can make it out is that by introducing this Panchayati Raj, we get to know that it allows people to get involved on issues that affected them. At the same time, it also helped them to get the opportunity to take initiative for the reconstructions of socio-economic of the country. Composition of local bodies. A few Gram Panchayats are grouped to form a Panchayat or Block Samiti or Mandal. The Panchayat members of the area are elected members of this representative body. All the Mandals or the Block Samiti in the district constitute the district or Zilla Parishad, and members of the district or Zilla Parishad are also elected. The local members of parliament, that is the MPs and MLAs of that particular area, are also associated with this body, that is the Gram Panchayat. The political head of the Zilla Parishad is appointed as its chairperson. The Panchayati Raj system includes a structure of government that is organized at 3 levels. Each level is linked to the next level. In this way, the village is connected with government at the district level. Municipal bodies. There are 3 types of municipalities exist in urban areas, that is the town and cities. Number 1 is Nagar Panchayats, and they are created in areas that are in the process of transition from a rural area to an urban area. By Nagar Panchayat means here we're talking about those areas or those localities which are about to turn into a town. Number 2, municipal councils, and they are founded in smaller urban areas, in small towns. And the third one is municipal corporation, and they are exist in large urban areas, in big towns and cities. And people elect their representatives to these bodies. The political head of the body is its chairperson, and in large urban areas the mayor heads the municipal corporation. These municipal bodies continue to function even today, though with some changes. And the reason for the needs of these municipal bodies are: number 1, the bodies had limited powers and insufficient monetary resources to carry out their functions. Their working was influenced by caste consideration, so they rarely completed their terms. Attempts were not made to hold elections to replace these bodies. And these are the reason why the so-called local bodies did not yield positive results. Thus, to ensure a measure of democratic functionings at the lowest level and to bring about decentralization, distributions of power, the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act 1993 was passed. Now, what is amendments of 1993? There are some changes that have taken place as a result of this amendment. Number 1, the local bodies have to be formed on the basis of election that are held directly every 5 years. If for any reason the body is not able to complete its term of 5 years, election must take place within 6 months to constitute the body. Next, reservation. Seats are to be reserved for the people belonging to the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and OBCs, that is other backward classes, in proportion to their population. So based on the population in a particular area, seats should be or must be reserved for people belonging to these categories. And at least 1/3 of the seats are reserved for women. Supervision. Election to these bodies are held under supervisions of the State Election Commission. Powers. Some powers and revenue have been transferred to these bodies by the state government to help them carry out their functions. appraisal of local bodies or evaluation or analysis of local bodies. Now let us discuss about the merits of federalism or the advantages of federalism. Number one, decentralization. The decentralization of power has ensured that democracy percolates down to the lowest level. Because of the sharing of power, even the lowest level to the grassroots level, starting from the central government to the local bodies, people can enjoy it, people can participate in it, people can take initiative in the socio-economic development of the country because of this federalism system. And involvement of people. It has also involved people in the remotest of villages in India in an experiment that is one of its kind and the largest in the history of the world. So even people belonging to the village level in the far-flung places, they could take part, or they are also involved in the experiment. And this is first of its kind in the history of the world. Elections. Millions of people have got the opportunity to elect their representative to their local bodies time to time whenever an election is held. People go and cast a vote. In this way, they get the opportunity to elect their representatives to their local bodies. Raising concerns. This raises concerns that affect their daily lives. Decision making. This gives them a stake in the decision making and a sense of respect and dignity they have been longing for since ages. So through this federalism system, the citizens of India are allowed to take part in the decision making, and in this way we get a chance of self-respect and dignity. Representations. For women especially, the effort has been path-breaking. Representation through reservation has provided them an opportunity to prove their worth. It's a kind of a women empowerment. Strengthening of democracy. And institutions of government that empowers people will definitely strengthen democracy. These bodies not only ensure participations of people in administration, but also help people to control their government. Demerits, the disadvantages. Rare meeting. Gram Sabha meetings that involve people who are directly inducted into village administration rarely meet. Means the meeting or the committee of the Gram Sabha doesn't take place on a regular basis. It is conducted on a very rare basis. So that is one demerits. The second point of demerit is lack of resources. Local bodies lack the power and resources to make this effective. So because of for the want of power and resources for the government, the local bodies cannot function it effectively. Insufficient powers. No doubt there has been some devolutions of powers, but it is insufficient to meet the needs of the power. So the local bodies needs more power than what has been given so far. Therefore, the path to empowerment is not without pitfalls. However, it is hoped that the process started by the 73rd Amendment will lead to great changes, the impact of which can only be felt in future. Well, students, this is the last part. That's it for this lesson. And for your better understanding, I want all of you to take out your book, and while listening to this explanation, I want you to go through the books, your textbook, for your better understanding. And based on this explanation, notes will be given to you, at the same time assignment. Thank you.